The yellow sand filled the sky, and not a single blade of grass could be seen. It was the 13th day since the arrival of the apocalypse. My mother, who was blindly indulgent towards her younger brother, had all her supplies snatched away by the very brother she had always coddled the most, and I, her most despised daughter, dragged my seriously ill body around every day, begging our neighbors for food. In the end, I could only watch as my mother starved to death in her room. Consumed by endless regret, no one knew that after my mother died, she was reborn on the eve of this disaster. 1. Sis, sell your convenience store and invest the money in me. I have a friend who's doing financial investments. With that money of yours, it can double within a month. We're blood siblings. Would I ever cheat you? In front of me, my Uncle Matthew was speaking with great enthusiasm, trying to persuade my mother. My uncle didn't have a proper job and often found various ways to ask relatives for money. Other relatives regarded my uncle as a glib liar, but my mother was a brother-spoiling fool. She and my grandmother had doted on my uncle since he was a child. When my uncle got married, my mother paid the entire down payment for the house he bought. After my father passed away unexpectedly, my mother became even more reliant on my uncle. My mother often told me that my uncle was the only man in their family and would surely achieve great success in the future. As for me, getting married as soon as possible was the right path. However, today my mother didn't chime in and agree with my uncle as she usually did. Her gaze was fixed on the rattling window. Outside the window, the sky was a dull yellow, giving off an ominous and gloomy feeling as if a storm was about to break. The Meteorological Bureau had issued a yellow sandstorm warning early in the morning. Experts predicted that the severe sandstorm weather would last for a long time. My mother looked at the street filled with flying sand and rocks, and her brows gradually knitted into a knot. My uncle didn't notice my mother's distraction. He took out a stack of documents from his bag and made a gesture as if he wanted my mother to sign and seal them. I couldn't stand it anymore and snatched the pen on the table. Uncle, this shop was left by my dad. It's our family's only source of income, even if we were to sell it. It's our family's business. At least let me discuss it properly with my mom. Upon hearing this, my uncle gave me a contemptuous look. You little brat, what kind of attitude is that? Your father didn't even dare to talk to me like that when he was alive. Besides, when I'm talking to your mother, it's not your place, an outsider, to butt in. I think you just need some discipline. After saying that, my uncle raised his hand to slap me. In the eyes of my mother, who spoiled her brother, my uncle could do no wrong, and it was always others who were at fault. Your uncle hitting you is for your own good. Serena, you also have something wrong in this. Your father is gone, and we mother and daughter will have to rely on your uncle's help in the future. Can't you be more sensible? But this time, the expected slap didn't land. My mother suddenly grabbed my uncle's wrist. Her face was extremely ugly, and she almost roared as she said, Matthew, what right do you have to lecture my daughter? The shop was left by my husband. Who are you to tell us what to do? Also, when are you going to pay back the money you borrowed before? I was instantly stunned and looked at my mother in surprise. In my memory, even when my uncle had secretly taken the money that was meant for my father's life-saving treatment to speculate in futures, my mother hadn't spoken harshly to him. What was going on with my mother today? My uncle also widened his eyes in disbelief. Sis, we're family. Is it really necessary to be so clear about these things? Look at this damn weather outside. To put it bluntly, if something happens to you later, won't you still have to come to me for help? I'm your younger brother, the only man in our family. In the past, whenever my uncle said this, my mother would definitely be swayed by him. But today, as soon as my uncle finished speaking, my mother, as if stimulated, rushed forward and slapped him. Matthew, you heartless thing, I was brainwashed by Mom in the first place. Just because you were the only male child in the family, I blindly indulged you. Come to you for help. What did you do when your brother-in-law was seriously ill and we couldn't afford the money? What did you do when Serena needed money for school? Let me tell you, this grocery store is the lifeblood of our mother and daughter. You won't be able to cheat it out of my hands. As she cursed, my mother grabbed the house sales contract on the table. With a tearing sound, she ripped it into pieces. My mother was a kind-hearted person, except towards my father and me. She rarely lost her temper with others, not to mention towards her beloved younger brother. What was wrong with my mother today? 2. My uncle covered his swollen face and fled in a hurry. I was also so scared that I stood there at the table, not knowing what to do. The angry person in front of me was completely different from the mother I remembered. Just then, my mother turned to look at me. Suddenly, she put away her angry expression and affectionately put her arm around my shoulder. Serena, it was all my fault before. I wrongly believed Matthew's nonsense and blindly blamed you and your father. Can you forgive me? Mom, what's suddenly gotten into you? Before I could finish, my mother looked out the window worriedly again. The yellow sand filled the sky, and the visibility outside was now less than 50 meters. The sandstorm is getting bigger and bigger. Will you accompany me to the supermarket? Mom wants to stock up on some things. My mother had once again returned to her gentle and soft-spoken manner. This made me very confused, but I felt that something was not right, whether it was my mother's state or the howling sandstorm outside the window. The place my mother took me to is a large chain supermarket in the city center. My mother had always been thrifty in running the household. Usually, she bought things mostly at small markets and especially liked to snap up near-expired food. But this time, as soon as we stepped into the supermarket, my mother immediately pushed an extra-large shopping cart. "Mom, are you planning to buy some big item? How about I take you to?" Before I could finish, my mother had already rushed towards the beverage shelf. My mother was used to being thrifty. Usually, when she saw me drinking bottled water, she couldn't help but nag a few words. However, today she carried 5 or 6 cases of mineral water at once and stacked them in the shopping cart. I looked at my mother in shock. "Mom, why are you buying so much water?" My mother seemed not to hear my question. She turned and walked to the adjacent beverage shelf. "Serena likes to drink orange juice, right?" As she said this, my mother picked up 7 or 8 bottles of each bottle with an orange-yellow outer package and stuffed them into the shopping cart. The stock clerk in the supermarket was attracted by our shopping cart that was quickly filled. "Ma'am, our supermarket provides a delivery service. I can record the types first, and it can be delivered to your home on the same day." The stock clerk's attentive expression was as if he had seen the god of wealth. I was just about to step forward to explain, but unexpectedly, my mother agreed immediately. Pointing at the full cart, she said, "Just in time, order another 30 cases of water and 10 cases of each kind of beverage. The dates must be the most recent ones, not near expired." I was extremely nervous and pulled at the corner of my mother's clothes. What are we going to do with so much water and beverages? This amount is enough for us to drink for a year, and where are we going to put all of it if we buy it back? My mother turned her head to explain amidst her busyness. "The inventory in our shop is running low. Buying them back is like stocking up in advance. There are plenty of empty shelves. If we organize them well, they can definitely fit." After saying this, my mother dragged the stock clerk to the adjacent grain and oil counter. 30 packs each of Wuchang rice, organic rice, and fragrant rice. Choose the best brands for peanut oil and corn oil, and order 10 barrels of each for me. For the flour, choose the ones with the latest dates, and also get 20 bags of each. The stock clerk quickly made notes with a pen. I listened to that astonishing series of numbers, and my heart, liver, and spleen were all trembling. It's true that our family runs a convenience store on the street, but who would buy goods for their shop from a supermarket? My mother was someone who would even try to bargain several times when buying cabbages at the vegetable market. Now, buying in bulk at a loss like this, the net loss was even greater than our family's expenses for the past year. Was my mother crazy? 3. My mother didn't realize her own abnormality at all. In the blink of an eye, she walked to the fresh and frozen food cabinet. "My child likes to eat chicken drumsticks and chicken wings. Bring me 10 packs of this 5-pound package. 20 boxes each of beef and mutton rolls, and also 2 full cases of beef steaks and lamb chops, shrimps, scallops, solefish, and black carp slices, 10 cases of each of these." As my mother mumbled, she came to the adjacent raw meat counter. I rushed up in 3 steps at a time. "Mom, frozen seafood doesn't sell well. Ordering so much goods will definitely be a burden. Moreover, the 2 freezers in the store can't hold so many things at all." But after hearing this, my mother just smiled and ruffled my hair. "These are all the things you usually like to eat. If we can't sell them, we can just keep them and eat them slowly. The freezers are not a problem. Mom will go upstairs and order a few more later." After saying this indulgently, my mother pointed at the raw meat in the fresh food cabinet again. 20 whole chickens, 20 whole ducks, and also 20 pigeons each, pork belly, spare ribs, pig trotters, and pig offal. Weigh about 10 pounds of each for me. By the way, make sure these meats are all the freshest." My mother dragged the stock clerk and then rushed to the snack area in a hurry. She was like a live-streaming salesperson. In the blink of an eye, she had already placed dozens of orders. It was only after ordering dozens of cases of snacks and more than 50 cases of facial tissues and toilet paper that my mother finally stopped her hasty steps. I was already stunned, standing there in a daze. I heard my mother muttering to herself, "I wonder if all these things I bought are enough." As she said this, she suddenly turned to look at me. I saw my mother's eyes light up, and she grabbed my shoulders and asked, "Serena, I'm just saying, what if we can't go out in the future and can only stay in the store all day long, leaving aside the things just now, what else does our family need to buy?" I was full of questions after hearing this, but during the silence, My mother's gaze landed on my hoodie. Serena, didn't you say you wanted to buy new clothes before? Mom will take you to buy them now. Okay, my mother was usually thrifty and strictly controlled my daily expenses, but on this day, she led me straight into a high-end luxury brand store without looking away. Does Serena like this brand? Looking at the exquisitely tailored dress in front of me, I swallowed my saliva reservedly. Who could resist the temptation of Gucci? But the glaring number on the price tag was beyond what my mother's conservative consumption concept could afford. My mother saw my hesitation to speak and just smiled with her lips closed. She called the salesperson over and lightly tapped on a row of delicate clothes hangers with her finger. My daughter likes your brand's clothes. Take one of each. We'll take them all. I was so scared that I shuddered. But I couldn't stop my mother from scanning the code to pay. Serena, after your father passed away, I was too harsh on you, always imposing my own expectations on you. I even thought about marrying you off for the bride price because of that scoundrel Matthew. Serena, just think of it as giving Mom a chance to make up for it. My mother stared into my eyes, and there was even a hint of pleading in her tone, for my mother stocked up 4 shopping carts of goods. Before leaving, she took me to the best Western restaurant in the supermarket and we had a big meal. When I checked the bill at the checkout, the number on it was almost the total expenditure of our family for the past whole year. My face turned pale and then red again, and I was still wondering what was going on with my mother. My mother noticed my increasingly ugly expression and smiled, saying, Serena, money is meant to be spent. If we don't use it well, we can still spend it. When money can't buy things anymore, then, however... My mother's words were interrupted by a loud bang outside the window. We saw that a small billboard of the supermarket was actually swept into the sky by the yellow sand. Under the overwhelming yellow sand, the fragmented billboard fell straight down. A Mercedes-Benz was unfortunately hit right on the spot. The roof was also dented by the metal support of the billboard. I gasped. The sky seemed to become even more overcast. Under the cover of the overwhelming yellow sand, the sky actually had a strange dark red tint. Many people were shouting that they wanted to go home as soon as possible, and some supermarket staff were whispering about whether they could take leave recently. A couple sitting next to us was startled by the crashing sound. Why is the sandstorm getting stronger and stronger? Should we also buy some things in advance and stock them in the apartment just in case? The girl looked out the window nervously, but her boyfriend shrugged indifferently. It's just a wind. Could it really paralyze the city? Didn't the news say that this is just a large-scale sandstorm? It will be fine in a few days. There's no need to stock up on goods, right? I subconsciously frowned. Looking up, I found that my mother had already paid the bill and was urging the supermarket to send the things to our home as soon as possible. My mother looked at me and said, Serena, don't be afraid. The sandstorm is like this. It's the strong wind period now, and it's not suitable to go out. When the sandstorm is a bit smaller, we'll go back. My mother seemed calm, but her right hand subconsciously clenched the bottle of mineral water in the shopping cart and trembled from time to time, as if that was the last bottle of water left. 5. My mother's words really came true. An hour later, the sandstorm was much weaker than when we came, however. The air was filled with a thick smell of loess. It felt like we had entered a desert. I was choked and coughed continuously. My mother immediately took out a KN95 dust mask from her bag. She first covered my mouth and nose with the mask, then put one on herself, and then put her arm around my shoulder and quickly got into the car. The barrier gate of the supermarket's open-air parking lot had already stopped working due to the blowing of the sandstorm. The security guard had no choice but to stand by the roadside and collect the fee manually. The security guard of the supermarket was wearing a medical blue mask, but it couldn't stop the sand from pouring into his nose and mouth at all. He was in his 30s, but now he was coughing like an 80 or 90-year-old man. I saw that the security guard was suffering so much that I couldn't help but look at my mother in the driver's seat. My mother is a kind-hearted person. During the pandemic, my mother distributed a lot of N95 masks to those in the community who couldn't buy them. Later, when various antipyretics were in short supply, my mother also shared the few medicines we had at home with our neighbors. However, when facing the security guard who was coughing so badly, my mother just stared straight ahead and showed no intention of helping at all. Mom, how about... Before I could finish my words, my mother looked ahead with a determined expression. Serena, promise Mom that when danger comes, you just need to take care of yourself. No one is worth saving, including Mom too. What on earth was going on? Maybe Mom only brought 2 masks with her when she went out today, I thought silently. At this moment, the security guard finally moved aside and signaled that we could pass, but his hoarse coughing made me feel as if his lungs were about to burst out of his mouth. Sure enough, just as the car started, I suddenly noticed a dark red stain spreading on the security guard's blue mask. Was he having a nosebleed, or was it blood foam from coughing? Just as I was about to take another look, my mother stepped on the gas pedal, and the car roared towards the street. The security guard's painful figure was quickly left behind. The sandstorm obviously showed a trend of getting stronger. But there were still many delivery guys active on the street. The suffocating coughing sounds were like ghosts. Mingling with the howling wind, occasionally, the sharp sirens of ambulances could be heard interspersed. All kinds of sounds rose and fell on the street, making one's scalp tingle. Mom, do you think we should also stock up on some medicines and masks in advance? If this sandstorm continues like this, I'm afraid many people will get lung diseases. I study at a local medical university, so I know quite well. If people are exposed to the dusty weather for a long time without protection, they are likely to develop dust pneumonia. In severe cases, it can even lead to respiratory failure. Hearing this, my mother, who was holding the steering wheel, suddenly shuddered. Through the rearview mirror, I saw fear written all over her eyes. 6. An orange sandstorm warning message also popped up on my phone. My mother turned the steering wheel and headed straight for the nearest top-level tertiary hospital. Doctor, prescribe as many antibiotics, anti-inflammatory drugs, and antipyretics as possible. Prescribe more cough suppressants, as well as medicines for rhinitis and lung diseases. Both Western and traditional Chinese medicines are fine. While recording the prescription, the doctor looked up at my mother with a somewhat amused expression. Sister, this is just an ordinary sandstorm, although it seems menacing now. After a few rounds of artificial rainfall, it will be sunny again. There's really no need to stock up on so many medicines. The doctor seemed to want to dampen my mother's enthusiasm for stocking up on medicines, but my mother just smiled with the corner of her mouth and didn't explain anything. Soon, my mother and I left the hospital carrying large and small bags, but my mother still seemed to think it wasn't enough. She took my hand and went into a chain pharmacy along the street. The shopping basket in my mother's hand was instantly filled with things like masks, cotton swabs, and gauze. She also piled up about 10 bottles of external medications such as Yunnan Baiyao spray, traumatic injury pills, iodine tincture, and alcohol. My mother, with great energy, transported more than a dozen plastic bags back to the car in batches. The sandstorm outside was much stronger than before. When I took off my mask, I found a thick layer of dust attached to the surface of the non-woven fabric. Although the car door was closed, a lot of sand still blew into the car. I took a few deep breaths, and my mouth tasted bitter, like I had eaten dirt. I took out my phone and checked. Sure enough, the air pollution index had broken through 300. This was already severe pollution. This time, it feels like the air quality is even worse than during the smog days back then. I murmured softly. Unexpectedly, my mother's hand that was turning on the turn signal suddenly stopped. Serena, I think we only have one air purifier at home, right? Hearing this, my heart skipped a beat. I was just about to explain that the store's area was limited, and one air purifier was enough for emergency use, but at this moment, the car had already turned around and was heading straight for the e-commerce city in the city center. My mother bought nearly 10 air purifiers in one go. At the same time, she also bought dozens of filters, batteries, and other spare parts of various sizes. Not only that, my mother also purchased 2 generators and a series of outdoor survival supplies. Looking at the climbing rope, high-intensity flashlight, and toolbox in the shopping bag, I felt a headache, but my mother wouldn't listen to my advice. She paid by scanning the code so simply that she didn't allow me to question her at all. When we came out of the e-commerce city, it was already getting dark. All the channels of the car radio were now talking about this large-scale sandstorm. Flights were grounded, highways were closed, and primary and secondary schools were suspended. A series of emergency response measures were successively announced. The latest news is that the dusty weather is expected to continue for another month. Please, citizens, take good personal protection and do not go out unless necessary. But despite such appeals, the traffic on the road during the evening rush hour was still extremely congested. The continuous coughing sounds and the irritable honking of car horns rose and fell on the road. Along the way, I witnessed more than a dozen traffic accidents of various sizes. Traffic police, public security officers, and even urban management officers swarmed onto the streets to maintain order. But under the shroud of the sandstorm, the whole city became more and more chaotic. When will this damn weather end? I feel like people will go crazy in a few more days, I complained helplessly. Unexpectedly, my mother, who had been lost in thought all the way, suddenly chimed in. This is just the beginning. It will only get more chaotic in the future. I looked at her in confusion. My mother seemed to know in advance what this disaster would eventually turn into. 7. After returning to the community, my mother went to park the car. I went back to the store one step ahead. Unexpectedly, my uncle, who was scolded away yesterday, actually had the nerve to come to the store again. My uncle without any sense of being an outsider, grabbed 2 huge plastic bags. When he entered the store and shook them open, he started taking things off the shelves. "Serena, the weather is bad, and the market is closed. My family didn't stock up on vegetables in advance. You have so many goods in your store, so I came to get some. By the way, later, you ask your mom to send some vegetables to my house." As he said this, my uncle had already filled a bag and turned to leave. Just then, my mother walked in carrying a bag. The moment their eyes met, she already understood what was going on and stepped forward to block my uncle's way. "Matthew, did you pay for these?" My uncle laughed with a playful expression. "Sis, you know your nephew is picky and only likes to eat the snacks in your store. He's our family's bloodline. It's okay if you're mean to me, but you can't let the child suffer, right?" Hearing this, my mother sneered. She snatched the bag from my uncle's hand. "He's your son, not mine. Either pay up honestly or get out." My uncle snorted with a twisted expression. "Is it really that serious? It's just that I haven't returned the money I borrowed from you before. Is it really necessary? I'm telling you, our mom is watching from heaven. Don't be too." Before my uncle could finish his threatening words, my mother had already picked up the broom at the door. "Get out. If you don't pay back the money, I'll beat you every time you come." Watching my uncle scurry away with his head in his hands, although I felt secretly pleased, I still couldn't believe it. When my father was alive, my uncle never paid a penny for the things he took from our convenience store. He also often mocked my father, saying that he was useless and could only run such a shabby store at his age. In my uncle's mind, the things in our house were his, although my mother was acting strangely today. But she was so cool. 8. After driving my uncle away again, my mother lowered the rolling shutter door early and closed the store for business. "Serena, organize the things on the shelves and take inventory. Put the near-expired items on one shelf, and I'll deal with them centrally." Was my mother making room for the newly purchased goods? But she had never been so concerned about the store's business before. While I was wondering, my mother had already lowered her head and started working again. There wasn't much inventory left in the convenience store. An hour later, my mother and I finished sorting. My mother had been full of energy these days and didn't feel tired at all. As soon as we finished here, she raised her phone and took pictures of the near-expired products one after another. I took a curious look and found that my mother actually sent these pictures directly to the community group, "Convenience store for transfer, clearance sale. All items in the store are 30% off, first come, first served." Seeing this, I was startled and quickly stopped her. "Mom, didn't we just stock up on goods? Why are you suddenly quitting the business? What about that pile of things we bought before?" My mother looked at me solemnly, then reached out and touched my head. "Mom just wants them to think that we mother and daughter have moved away. Serena, trust Mom. When everything is done, Mom will explain it to you. After your dad left, Mom only has you. Mom will never harm you." As soon as my mother finished speaking, the community group exploded. Due to the severe sandstorm weather, many people could only stay at home and spend their time browsing their phones. As soon as the news came out, a group of people were immediately drawn out. "Isabel, why are you suddenly quitting the business? How many days will the clearance sale last? When are you moving out?" My mother ignored me and instead tapped on the screen to reply one by one. "I'm having trouble with business turnover, and the house has already been sold. I have to move out within this week. The clearance sale is just for today and tomorrow. I'll sell as much as I can." While my mother was replying to the messages, my uncle also sent a private message, joining in the fun. "Sis, it seems you've thought it through. After you transfer the store, just transfer the money directly to my card. By the way, save some things in your store for me. Your nephew wants to eat ice cream. Ask Serena to bring them to me, and I can give her some errand money." My mother's face turned cold when she saw this, and she didn't hesitate to block my uncle. 9. Our family's convenience store was converted from a residential house for commercial use and is located on the first floor of the apartment building. There are 2 doors, one inside and one outside, for entry and exit. Now, due to the dusty weather, the outside door has been locked, and only the small inside door is left open. Soon, the neighbors who saw the news came to the store one after another to take advantage of the sale. We were all old acquaintances, and when they heard that my mother planned to retire and enjoy her old age, they all expressed their feelings. In just one day, most of the things in the store were sold. We finished clearing the goods today, and we'll leave the day after tomorrow, while the road is still passable. My mother repeated this sentence to every customer, and at the same time, her gaze casually swept towards the outside of the store from time to time. The sandstorm warning information issued by the Meteorological Observatory has now been upgraded to the highest red level. When I went out to take out the trash in the morning, I felt that the fine sand and dust were whistling past like small knives. All the neighbors who came to take advantage of the sale were fully armed, wrapping themselves up like zombies. I was helping my mother on the side. The more I looked, the more I felt that the smile on my mother's face was a bit stiff. The neighbors who came to the store to snap up the goods had now left one after another. My mother, who seemed a bit absent-minded, finally noticed my scrutinizing gaze. She was taken aback for a moment and then asked with a bitter smile, "Serena, do you think Mom is crazy?" I didn't dare to nod, but my increasingly suspicious expression betrayed me. Seeing this, my mother let out a long sigh and finally told me the truth. "I had a strange dream yesterday. In the dream, just like now, the whole world suddenly encountered a huge sandstorm, the city quickly paralyzed, with water and electricity cut off, and people were starved into death. Just then, there was a rattling sound on the street outside the window again. A trash can was swept into the air by the strong wind and directly shattered the window upstairs. I also know that what I'm saying now sounds a bit crazy." My mother slowly hugged her arms amidst the crackling sound of heavy objects falling to the ground outside the window. "But it's really too similar. Everything happening now is too similar to that dream." As she said this, a hint of determination suddenly flashed in my mother's flustered eyes. "This natural disaster is more terrifying than you can imagine. It will last for a long time and drive everyone crazy. By then, people will no longer be human. Even the neighbors who used to be on good terms will. Mom has lived a long life. Mom isn't afraid of death. But I don't want anything to happen to you, Serena." My mother didn't continue, but I still understood. In my mother's dream, she and I didn't survive this apocalypse. A single mother and her daughter couldn't last long in such an apocalyptic situation, but I still couldn't understand my mother's nervousness. It was just a dream. Was it really necessary to take it seriously? "This time, we must survive." When she said these words, there was an unprecedented firmness in my mother's tone. The next morning, I was awakened by a dull sound of heavy objects being moved. I got up and took a look, only to find that my mother had actually moved aside the heavy wooden cabinet in the corner of the room. The cabinet had been there for some years and was covered with a thick layer of dust. At this moment, my mother moved the cabinet to the side, revealing a hidden door behind it. The door was very old, and the doorknob was already rusted. My mother tried the key in her hand several times before she managed to turn the lock cylinder with difficulty. I knew about this door when I was a child. Behind the door was a basement. It was my father's former workshop, filled with my father's belongings. If there was a large quantity of goods being stocked in the store, this basement could also serve as a temporary small storage warehouse. But since my father passed away, my mother had completely sealed up the basement. In the basement, there were still various tools and raw materials that my father had used during his lifetime. My mother carried a huge black garbage bag and plunged in headfirst. The sound of banging and clattering never stopped. My mother actually packed all the sundries in the basement into the garbage bag. I was almost stunned by her crazy behavior. I grabbed her arm and urged her anxiously, "Mom, what are you doing? Didn't you say that this was the last thing Dad left us as a reminder? Where are you going to take these things?" My mother looked back at me. Only then did I notice that her eyes were red. "The sandstorm will paralyze the whole city in a few days. Under the environment of resource shortage, our family's convenience store will become a target." Everything Mom did before was to make the neighbors think that we mother and daughter had moved away. "Only by hiding in your father's basement is there a possibility of survival." There was a throbbing pain in my forehead. Mom still stubbornly believed in her dream, but there's no need to throw all the things inside away, right? I argued reluctantly, but the next second, I remembered Mom's crazy stockpiling in the mall before. "Serena, the space in the basement is limited. We have to stockpile all the supplies down there, your father's things." Having said this, Mom paused for a moment and shook her head with some struggle. "Your father won't blame us. He must also hope that his precious daughter can survive." 11. Under Mom's insistence, we quickly cleaned up Dad's basement. Mom transferred all the newly stocked goods from yesterday to the basement. The sandstorm was getting stronger and stronger. The pollution index prompted on the phone had already reached 500. 500 was the maximum peak of air pollution. At the same time, the visibility also dropped sharply to within 30 meters. Looking outside, except for the faintly visible store signs across the street, even the traffic lights at the street corner were just a vague shadow. The city was basically in a semi-paralyzed state. Only a few private cars were still driving on the road against the wind. Looking at the apocalyptic scene outside the house, I increasingly felt that the decision Mom made was extremely correct. Almost all the near-expired food in the grocery store had been sold out, and the surrounding neighbors all thought that we had already moved away. Mom and I were busy in the store, sweating profusely. Unexpectedly, the rolling shutter door was knocked loudly at this time. Mom frowned tightly. While quickly putting the wooden cabinet back in place, she whispered to me, "Serena, We must never let the neighbors detect anything unusual now. Don't say a word about the stockpiling of goods or this basement. Remember, when a great disaster is upon us, people are scarier than ghosts. Mom patted my shoulder and then adjusted her expression to open the door, although I didn't believe Mom's dream, but looking at her tense expression, I actually got goosebumps all over my body involuntarily. The rolling shutter door went up at this time. Who would have thought that the person waiting outside the door was actually my persistent uncle again? 12. As soon as Mom saw it was him, she turned around and wanted to lower the rolling shutter door. Unexpectedly, Uncle raised his hand and blocked it. This time, Uncle was no longer smiling playfully. There was even a hint of viciousness on his face. Sis, what on earth have you been crazy about these days? And you even blocked me. You're going to move away. Why didn't you even say a word? Also, who on earth did you transfer your store to? Do you think you can get rid of me just by moving away? Mom looked at him with a cold face and unconsciously clenched a utility knife in her hand. It's none of your business where I move. Get out. You're not welcome here. Uncle's gaze wandered between Mom and me. After a moment, he suddenly stared at me intently. There was a malicious smile on his face. I understand. Did Serena mess around with some random man outside? Are you, as a mother, selling everything you have to scrape together a dowry for her? Didn't she look down on the person I introduced to her before? Why is she in such a hurry to find a man now? Does she know that she won't be able to get married if she waits any longer? Shut up. I blushed when I heard this and felt a surge of anger in my heart. The blind date Uncle introduced to me some time ago was a greasy bachelor in his 40s, that person was his friend, and the two unemployed men shared the same tastes. Mom couldn't refuse out of courtesy at that time and even forced me to meet him once. I still can't forget the lewd look that bald fat pig gave me when he saw me. At this time, Uncle brought this up, clearly wanting to humiliate me, but Mom reacted faster than me. Her eyes were wide with anger, and she raised the utility knife directly at Uncle. Matthew, listen carefully. As long as I'm here, you won't be able to bully Serena. If you dare to say another bad word about my daughter, I'll kill you right now. Uncle didn't expect that such an honest person like my mom would actually dare to use a knife. He panicked, grabbed a few packs of snacks casually, and fled the grocery store in a hurry. While running, he threatened, Isabel, I came to see you because I thought highly of you. You really want to push things to the limit, don't you? Let me tell you, I won't pay back a single penny of the money I borrowed from you. When you two need money in the future, don't come crawling to me and beg. Mom looked at Uncle's ugly face and suddenly sneered. When your son coughs up blood even when he takes a breath and there's no medicine to save him, don't forget these words of yours. Even if you want to beg me then, I'll have already moved away. Uncle was confused when he heard this. He vented his anger by overturning the shelf at the door and then swaggered away. 13. After getting rid of Uncle's harassment, the sky gradually darkened. Mom and I had already transferred all the supplies to the basement. Then, taking advantage of the moment when the sandstorm stopped slightly, we pretended to load the suitcases into the car, drove the car out of the community, and then secretly rode back on a bicycle to deceive others. We sold all the original cabinet freezers in the convenience store to the neighbors in the community at a low price in advance. That night, the sandstorm was terrifyingly strong. Even when we were hiding in the basement, we could hear the howling of the strong wind, but Mom's expression was much more relaxed than in the previous days. She rummaged through the numerous cartons standing by the wall and found the hot pot base. She also took out tripe, meat rolls, and various fresh vegetables from the fresh food cabinet. At this moment, the large and small cartons filling the basement not only didn't make people feel messy and crowded, the compressed and narrow space, on the contrary, brought a sense of inexplicable peace of mind, perhaps due to mental excitement. After working continuously for a day, close to midnight, Mom and I didn't feel sleepy at all. I checked the latest situation of the sandstorm on my phone. Some cities in the north had now completely fallen. Panic spread rapidly along the internet like a virus. Looking at the terrifying videos on the self-media, I finally believed Mom's dream. I felt and could only relieve my anxiety by unpacking the boxes, but at the moment when the utility knife cut through the tape, I couldn't help but frown. Mom, why did you buy so many cameras? Even if we install them all around our house, we won't need dozens of them. With this reminder, Mom suddenly remembered and quickly said, I almost forgot. Well, it's still dark, let's quickly install the cameras in the apartment building. Very few people go out these days, and they mostly stay at home. Disguise them carefully, and they won't be discovered. I was confused and scratched my head. Seeing this, Mom patiently explained again, install 2 cameras at the entrance of the corridor, on the roof, and in each stairwell on every floor, this way. Even though we've moved underground, we can still keep abreast of the situation in the community at all times. Looking at Mom's serious expression, my heart skipped a beat for no reason. Mom, is something going to happen in the building? The people living around here are mostly elderly uncles and aunts. Why are we installing surveillance cameras to keep an eye on them? Mom let out a sigh and shook her head, saying, Serena, never underestimate anyone, for the sake of survival. People can be 100 times more cruel than they can imagine. I have a hunch that everything will change after tomorrow. 14. Mom's prediction finally came true. The sandstorm didn't subside with time. On the contrary, on the same night when Mom and I installed the cameras, the wind force of the sandstorm suddenly soared to level 10. The strong wind swept in, tearing at the whole street with an overwhelming momentum. Everything that was isolated, such as utility poles, street trees, and road signs, all were uprooted. The private cars parked on the street were also pushed around by the wind at this time. The car alarms beeped almost from morning till night. The sand and dust were dense, like a huge black greyhound, slapping the whole city. Even during the day, it was already pitch dark outside. The visibility dropped directly to a single digit. When I looked outside through the surveillance camera, I found that most of the store sign hanging high on the opposite shop had been torn off by the strong wind, but fortunately, the power facilities in our area had just been updated and replaced in the previous few years. Thankfully, all the cables had been buried underground. Otherwise, after this strong wind, all the blocks would have a collective power outage. Looking at the apocalyptic scene of darkness, I felt scared. On the contrary, Mom became completely calm, although we could only live in the basement. But under Mom's leadership, the quality of our life didn't decline at all. Mom mostly spent her time studying recipes and changing the dishes to improve my meals. In the past, Mom always grudged spending money on food and clothes. Even though we had money, we lived a tight life. She even let Matthew's ungrateful family take advantage of us. Now, in the face of this apocalyptic scene, Mom had let go of those past obsessions and instead lived a much more carefree life. However, compared with the peace and harmony in the basement, the city outside was not so peaceful. 15. During the period when the super-strong sandstorm raged, the power system was gradually damaged by the strong wind. Although the power station hadn't completely collapsed, the whole city had already implemented power rationing measures. Taking our block as an example, there was only about 6 hours of electricity supply every day. The once crowded city had turned into a ghost town in the blink of an eye. This sandstorm was like a huge eraser. It was gradually erasing the traces of human existence. The complete paralysis of logistics and transportation also triggered a series of terrifying side effects. The activity range of citizens was gradually limited to their respective small living circles. No one could go too far from home, so there was no replenishment of supplies. The network signal hadn't been interrupted. The public media named this natural disaster the Black Sandstorm. Originally, this was an extreme weather limited to the desert environment, but for some unknown reason, the sand all over the world seemed to have gone crazy. Now, with a destructive momentum, it was rushing towards the areas with frequent human activities. In just a few months, many remote villages and mountain strongholds had been buried by the wind and sand and had disappeared from the map forever. At first, the casualty data from various places were still being summarized and released one after another, but later, the number of missing and uncontactable people soared exponentially. A person who was still posting videos today might already be dead at home tomorrow. Everyone tacitly agreed and no longer dared to count those useless numbers. The upper authorities frequently appealed to the citizens to stay calm, strictly prohibited going out, and wait for the disaster to end. But the sandstorm continued day after day, and there was no end in sight. As time passed, many families had already experienced a serious shortage of supplies. In our community group, we could see the help-seeking messages from some families every day. A large number of people began to suffer from hunger. The desire to survive forced people to go out and look for supplies. But the city swept by the crazy sand was like a man-eating monster. Everyone who tried to walk on the street couldn't guarantee that they could go home safely. The wind force of the Black Sandstorm had soared to a level 12 hurricane. Some people were swept into the air and fell to their deaths as soon as they stepped out of the corridor. Some were crushed to death by falling objects from high places. However, this was not the worst. The terrifying thing was that people who inhaled a large amount of sand and dust for a long time had triggered a series of respiratory diseases. The first to fall were the weak women, children, and the elderly, but gradually, many young and strong people also successively suffered from pneumoconiosis. The hospital had already stopped operating, and the sick people could only hope that the drugs they had stocked at hand could save their lives. In our community group, More than 10 people had coughed up blood and died due to pneumoconiosis within just this week. At first, I refreshed the news updates regularly every day, but when pneumoconiosis spread rapidly in the city, I also began to be afraid to look at my phone. All the social platforms were filled with all kinds of cries for help. Just watching these made people feel a pang of pain in their hearts. Only Mom was still continuously paying attention to the information from the outside world. And she insisted on recording and comparing the situation every day. Serena, we need to understand the situation of the affected areas everywhere. We can't completely cut off contact with the outside world, otherwise, if something happens, we won't even be prepared. Mom wasn't a strong person, but in this special period, she was more persevering than ever before. If it weren't for Mom's seemingly crazy series of actions before, I'm afraid I would have already. 16. Mom always paid close attention to the trends on social media, especially the property management group of our community. As the hurricane outside became stronger and stronger, news of damaged and collapsed buildings came from all over the city. Our community wasn't a newly built residential building, so when the homeowners heard that the storefront rooms in the same block had collapsed and cracks had appeared in the building, the whole group fell into a panic. Building 3 is located in the wind direction, and the anti-theft door of the corridor has been blown away. The West households are severely damaged, and there are hardly any intact glass panes left. If we continue to stay trapped inside, something serious might happen one day. In the community group, there were many discussions about the situation of our apartment building. After careful consideration, the property management suggested that all the residents of Building 3 move to the Elderly Activity Center in the middle of the community urgently against the wind and sand. After Mom learned this news, she immediately registered a new WeChat account, joined the property management group, and appealed to all the homeowners not to move away. It's very dangerous to move at this critical moment. What's more, the Elderly Activity Center may not be safe either, however. As soon as Mom sent the message, she was questioned and cursed by countless people. Property management, quickly find out who this person is and what their intentions are. The house is almost being blown apart, and they still want us to keep living here. Will you be responsible if something happens? Does anyone have extra food? I'm willing to pay for it. My family didn't stock up, and all the food has been eaten up. I still have instant noodles at home, 1 pack, for 100 yuan. Mom helplessly logged out of WeChat, then opened the refrigerator and fried 2 steaks for me. During this period, besides cooking various delicious dishes for me, Mom also told me to exercise every day to maintain my physical strength. 1 week later, in the evening, after a loud rumbling sound, the community group suddenly exploded with messages. Someone in the group posted a video. The Elderly Activity Center located in the middle of the community was actually hit by a stone pier carried by the hurricane, which pierced through the wall. The center of gravity of most of the building shifted instantly, and it collapsed. Many residents of Building 3 who had moved here as a precautionary measure because the exterior walls of their own houses were damaged were buried in the ruins while they were asleep. The cries of adults and the screams of children. All kinds of miserable howls were torn apart by the night wind, making people tremble with fear. The community group was in chaos. No one could have predicted that an ordinary stone pier could actually pierce through the load-bearing wall at once. But amidst the mourning of everyone, they tacitly did not propose to offer help. The survivors could only stagger back to their homes that were already drafty. But the exhaustion from this journey caused the residents who managed to make it back to gradually develop pneumoconiosis. Dozens of people coughed up blood, suffocated, and died a tragic death at home. The shadow of death hung over the entire community, but what was more urgent was that staying at home during this period had caused many families to completely run out of supplies. More and more people, risking being swept away by the black sandstorm, began to try going out to find supplies, and on this afternoon, when the wind and sand stopped slightly for a while, the surveillance camera I installed at the door of the store suddenly captured the dynamic image of a human body and sent out bursts of alarm sounds. Mom warily clicked on the surveillance screen. After taking a look, Mom and I were stunned. In the picture, it was the back of my Uncle Matthew. At this moment, he was holding a wrench and furiously smashing the rolling shutter door of the convenience store. 17. After not seeing him for a while, the great change in my uncle made us gasp in surprise. The trendy clothes that used to fit him so well had now been replaced by a dirty windbreaker. Uncle was planning to break into the store to search for supplies this time, but when Mom closed the store, she transferred all the things to the basement. The only things left in the store were rows of old shelves and the wooden cabinet against the wall. Uncle wandered around inside for a while and finally came out empty-handed. I kept staring at the screen. Is Uncle sick? He has been coughing since just now. Mom, look, his shoulders keep shaking. Mom used to be an incurable brother-spoiling fool, but now, when she looked at her own younger brother in the video, The expression on her face was as if it had been frozen. After a long time, Mom shook her head and said, "It's that Matthew's son has pneumoconiosis, and he came here this time to look for medicine. If we were still upstairs, all the medicine would be snatched away by him this time. This would mean that when you get pneumoconiosis a few days later, there would be no medicine left for you to use." As she spoke, Mom pointed to the wrench in Uncle's hand, in the dream. I rushed up to argue with Matthew, but he hit me on the head with it, and I could never stand up again. In the next few days, Matthew will come to rob the few remaining supplies we have until he forces us to death. Mom gritted her teeth as she said the last few words. I looked at Uncle's down and out back in the surveillance screen. I wasn't surprised at all. Uncle was indeed capable of doing such a heartless thing, thinking like this. I estimated the time and switched the surveillance screen. If he couldn't get the medicine from our house, he would surely go to harm others. Sure enough, the corridor surveillance showed that Uncle knocked on the door of the house next door. It was a lonely old man who had been a university professor when he was young and was very kind-hearted, so even in such a tense situation, he still chose to open the door for Uncle. This was a terribly wrong decision, because the moment the door opened, the wrench in Uncle's hand slammed into the old professor's forehead. The door was quietly closed, and blood oozed out along the gap of the door. When Uncle came out again, he had several more plastic bags in his hand, which were filled with supplies. 18. In the city ravaged by the Black Sandstorm, violent incidents of smashing, looting, and robbing were gradually escalating, with the collapse of social order. People began to follow the law of the jungle, the principle of the survival of the fittest. Uncle gathered a group of scoundrels like himself in the community. This group of people began to violently attack other unarmed residents. There was a young couple living upstairs in my house who had a pair of children. The couple had gentle and kind personalities and were also very far-sighted. During the days when the sandstorm was gradually getting stronger, they started stockpiling supplies early and also bought a lot of food from our grocery store, but just as Mom had said before, in the apocalypse, if you are known to possess a large amount of supplies, it is inevitable that others will covet them. At this moment, Uncle stood in front of that family's door and shouted loudly, "There are only 4 people in their family, yet they monopolize all the resources and let others starve to death. Shouldn't we teach such selfish people a lesson?" Such a blatant distortion of right and wrong actually won the unanimous applause of the neighbors. What Matthew said is right. This family doesn't care about the lives of others. They should also taste what it's like to have no food to eat. I looked at the angry crowd in the community surveillance and widened my eyes in disbelief. These people have gone crazy. The couple closed the door tightly and loudly scolded those people. They thought that the anti-theft door could keep out the bandits outside, but in fact, when fire axes, kitchen knives, sledgehammers, all the weapons that people could think of rained down on the door, the fate of this family was sealed. Mom and I saw it clearly from the surveillance, and our hearts trembled. The family upstairs was ransacked by the thugs led by my uncle. The male owner was beaten to death and lay motionless in a pool of blood. The female owner huddled at home with her 2 children, shivering. I couldn't bear to watch it and always felt that they were so close, and maybe I could help them a little. But Mom didn't agree. "Serena, we can't help them. Matthew and his gang are constantly wandering around in the apartment building. When they meet someone strong and healthy, they persuade them to join. When they meet the weak, they rob them of everything. Once we show any sign, it's all over." 19. Mom was right. Almost all the apartments in the entire building were ransacked by the thugs led by Uncle. There were also people like Uncle in other apartment buildings. If it weren't for Mom creating the illusion of moving away and closing the store, our family's convenience store would surely have been bloodily ransacked by now. And at this moment, the power supply system in the city was almost paralyzed. The increasingly crazy behavior of the residents made the property management, which had been turning a blind eye and a deaf ear, sense the signs of a riot. In order to prevent the situation from completely getting out of control, the property management issued a new initiative in the group. We hope to collect supplies and then establish a unified allocation mechanism. This can not only make more rational use of the existing resources but also help families in distress. Please send all the supplies to the property management, and we will arrange for people to allocate them uniformly. I read the message in the property management group. I thought this might be a solution to the problem, however. Mom's face changed when she heard it. "People are going to start dying again." Mom shook her head with a bitter smile. "This is a really bad idea. If it weren't for this suggestion, the community wouldn't have completely fallen into chaos." And as soon as Mom finished speaking, I exclaimed when I looked at the constantly refreshing group chat, "Mom, you were really right. Are these people really arguing?" The community group was caught up in an almost endless verbal battle. The seemingly reasonable suggestion of the property management had touched the fragile nerves of the homeowners. Some people loudly cursed the property management for having ulterior motives. They said that the property management was planning to take stock and then rob the resources of each family. Some people felt that they had no obligation to care about the lives of others. Why should they compromise themselves to help others? The destructive natural disaster had pushed people's negative emotions to the extreme. Selfish remarks were instead rationalized in this situation: everyone for themselves, or heaven and earth will destroy them. This sentence that kept popping up in the group represented the attitude of everyone. At the same time, it also tore apart the superficial peace of this small group. Everyone stood on the opposite side of each other. The verbal abuse in the group soon spread to reality. Neighbors treated each other like enemies when they met. They were wary of each other, always feeling that the other was coveting their few remaining supplies. And in this tense atmosphere, a highly destructive thing happened quietly. The reservoir that had held on for half a month finally couldn't bear the burden, and the core water supply pipeline became blocked overnight. All the citizens in the city were terrified to find that the water flowing from the tap in their homes began to become thinner and smaller. The water quality became increasingly turbid, and a thick layer of sand could be precipitated every time. Everyone finally realized the problem that they had always been afraid to think about. The water supply was going to be cut off. 20. The high-rise residents were the first to have their water supply cut off. Although every family had made corresponding water storage preparations after the black sandstorm arrived. But when the water source was really cut off, people still fell into unprecedented panic. After about a week or so, the residents on the lower floors also fell into a water shortage panic. The surveillance camera I installed in the corridor recorded this terrifying scene. Uncle, who lived on a high floor, frantically grabbed the collar of the 8-year-old son of the neighbor's family. He was holding a kitchen knife in his hand, and the blade had already scratched the boy's neck. If you don't want to save my child, then I'll chop off your offspring. I'm saying this for the last time. If you don't give us the water, just wait to collect his body. The boy burst into tears, and blood quickly soaked his collar. Violent incidents like this emerged in an endless stream in the following month. Mom was right. People started dying in the community. The mutual killing among people was more cruel than diseases. Mom saw my horrified expression and gently patted my back with pity. Serena, don't be afraid. Mom is here. Mom will definitely help you get through this. In this terrifying atmosphere, Mom's words somewhat soothed me. For this reason, she specially cooked a Shandong cuisine dish that she had recently learned. In other families, such delicious food with both good color, aroma, and taste had already become an unattainable luxury that they didn't even dare to think about. But because of our large amount of early stockpiling, the consumption of resources now is minimal. Eating the carefully prepared meal by Mom, my emotions finally weren't so tense anymore. But just as I finished drinking the beverage and was about to go and wash the dishes, Mom, who was used to checking the surveillance, let out a cry of surprise. I fixed my eyes on the surveillance screen. Only then did I find that a large piece of glass was falling straight down. The position was just right, and it landed right in front of the door of our store. At this time, the glass shattered into pieces. The glass fragments were swept up by the strong wind and thrown into the air again. I subconsciously turned my head to look at the wind speed meter. I don't know when. The wind speed outside had already soared to level 14. This was already the level of a strong typhoon. No wonder the glass on the high-rise building was blown off. Fortunately, we were hiding in the basement, so we escaped this disaster. But just as I let out a sigh of relief, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that Mom unconsciously frowned. Since the disaster occurred, she had always seemed calm and composed, but this time, there was a hint of worry in Mom's eyes. When the power comes back on at home later, remember to charge all the devices that can be charged. After tonight, we'll have to rely on the generator. 21. Since the black sandstorm occurred, this was the most chaotic afternoon our family had ever experienced. During these short 2 hours of power supply, we almost used all the sockets in the house to charge all the electronic devices we could think of. After tonight, the whole city will completely shut down. Not only will the water supply be cut off, but the power will also be completely cut off. Mom said it very firmly. However, I looked at her with a blank expression. In the past few days, we had actually been paying attention to the news updates. The power system just issued an announcement this morning, saying that the preliminary repair of the power station had been completed. According to the current progress, there was hope to increase the power supply by 1 hour every day. Under the official WeChat public account, there was still a lot of joy and laughter. People seemed to have already seen the hope of getting through this disaster, but Mom's expression was very ugly. I asked her in surprise what would happen, but Mom pursed her lips and didn't say anything. And that night, after the darkness fell, I experienced the most terrifying night in my life. It was a night filled with continuous thunder and lightning. Amidst the howling wind, one huge ball lightning after another attacked the whole city. On the street, thick smoke and flames rose up instantly. The thunderstorm lasted for about 2 hours and finally stopped at dawn. The ball lightning raging on the street detonated many abandoned cars. The explosion set off huge flames, the windows of many houses were shattered by the lightning, thick smoke filled the entire building, most of the surveillance cameras we installed were out of order, most of the surveillance screens froze in the middle of the thunderstorm. By replaying the surveillance, I saw many familiar neighbors crying and screaming as they ran towards the corridor. There were even flames burning on the backs of many people, and miserable screams echoed throughout the building. Among them, I saw a familiar figure again. My aunt was kneeling on the corridor with her son in her arms. Her son was motionless, and she was all blackened by the fire, and my uncle was standing right in front of them, muttering something continuously. There was a crazy smile all over his face. 22. This thunderstorm claimed the lives of countless people, but my Uncle Matthew somehow survived this disaster. My uncle, who had lost his wife and son overnight, became even more crazy. He gathered a group of people and swept through the building with them to collect supplies. These people, like my uncle, had all lost their relatives and friends, and they were also in a desperate situation of lacking water and food. People who were driven to desperation began to rampage everywhere without distinguishing right from wrong. They were covered in blood and would kill anyone they saw. The more others pleaded pitifully, the more unscrupulous they became. After my uncle broke into my house countless times, this time, he came out holding a long shopping receipt. After looking at the item list on the receipt and the shopping date, my uncle seemed to have thought of something. He called that group of desperate men and rushed straight towards our grocery store. 23. Perhaps the date on that shopping receipt and Mom's previous abnormal behavior finally made my uncle realize that we might still be hiding in the grocery store. That group of thugs smashed open the rolling shutter door and quickly rushed into the grocery store. Under my uncle's signal, they began to search every corner frantically. Staring at the surveillance, my heart was pounding wildly. Mom stood in front of me, blocking me, and tightly gripping that utility knife in her hand. Serena, if they rush in later, you hide behind Mom. Mom will definitely not let anything happen to you. But these people had already killed many people in the community. They no longer cared whether their hands were stained with blood. Suddenly, my uncle's movements slowed down. He looked up, stared straight at the surveillance camera, and then turned his head to look in the direction of the basement. A crazy smile appeared on my uncle's face. The next second, the sound of the wooden cabinet being moved came from above. Mom quickly blocked the door. I reacted immediately, pushed the refrigerator down, and blocked the hidden door leading to the basement. Mom also quickly followed and kept piling supplies behind the refrigerator to hold the hidden door in place. It's right here. Open the door. Bang, 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 behind the door. There were continuous bursting sounds. And then came the sound of a fire axe chopping at the hidden door. Under the crazy smashing of that group of people, the hidden door was soon chopped into a crack. Then, a skinny big hand reached into the crack. After that, I saw half of my uncle's face, stained with blood, also appear behind the hidden door. Serena, you're really here, sister. You have such a heartless way. You actually lied to me. How should I repay you later? I casually picked up a frozen fish from the refrigerator and threw it at my uncle's face, making his head bleed. Get out. Mom also stepped forward and kept waving the utility knife, trying to force these people back. However, they became even more frantic in their actions. It seemed that the hidden door was about to be broken open by this group of people, but just then, the entire building, along with this small basement, began to shake violently. On the radio, a level 17 storm warning was broadcast. This was already the most destructive storm in existing records. 24. The whole world was shaking. All the glass on the outside of the grocery store was shattered by the strong wind. The howling wind, through the crack of the hidden door, kept pouring a large amount of sand into the basement. No one had ever seen such a scene, and even that group of desperate men were scared. The group of people who had been fierce just a second ago and now ran home like crazy. My uncle had just crawled out of the basement, and the next second, he disappeared. In the surveillance screen, it was vaguely visible that the position where my uncle had been standing was covered by a huge billboard. Dark red blood, along with the wind and sand, flowed into the basement. Mom quickly reacted and used the remaining wooden planks to block the crack of the hidden door. It was not easy to block the wind and sand, but the noise from above still did not subside. The only remaining surveillance camera on the screen was pointed at other apartment buildings in the community. There, a huge gray-black wind column was rising from the ground. In the blink of an eye, the apartment building in front had already been swallowed up by the wind column and collapsed with a loud crash in an instant. 25. This is a wedge-shaped tornado. My voice trembled with fear. The wind column of the tornado suddenly appeared, and the next second, it spread rapidly in all directions with an overwhelming momentum. The tall buildings in the community were like dominoes in the face of this terrifying wind column. The buildings collapsed one after another to the sides. In the blink of an eye, the wind column had swept the city center into an empty space. The debris of the buildings and fragments of steel bars were sucked up into the sky by a huge suction force at the same time. It's over. At this moment, my mind went blank. And I only felt Mom suddenly hug me and lie down. The wedge-shaped tornado was moving at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, the hurricane had swept up to us. The rumbling sound of the buildings collapsing was like the roar of a tiger ringing in my ears. In the darkness, we couldn't see anything, but we could feel that all around the basement, it was as if a bulldozer was desperately digging. Everything was shaking violently. In the chaos, I suddenly felt a flash of light in front of my eyes. I suddenly looked up and found that the top of the basement had already been torn into pieces by the strong wind. Fortunately, the location of our house deviated from the advancing direction of the wedge-shaped tornado. We were just swept by the strong wind at the outermost edge of the wind column, so after the first wave of powerful impact, the wind speed dropped sharply. However, all kinds of cement fragments that had been carried into the air were now falling down like raindrops. We had nowhere to dodge and were hit head-on. Something hit my forehead, and blood gushed out immediately. In the chaos, I couldn't even open my eyes, and I felt dizzy. In a hazy state of consciousness, I vaguely saw a huge black shadow swooping towards me. A loud buzz rang in my ears, and then I completely lost consciousness. 26. I don't know how long I was unconscious. When I woke up again, I felt as if the skin all over my body had been cut by a knife. I gasped and looked up. Only then did I find that my upper garment was already soaked in blood. Mom was lying on top of me, and her shoulder was already a mass of blood and flesh. A huge steel bar had hit her shoulder, and half of her arm was twisted into a strange arc. Countless stones had also fallen on Mom's back, and some had even embedded into the flesh. I suddenly remembered. Just before I was knocked unconscious by the falling stone, I had been knocked down by a great force. It turned out that Mom had rushed over regardless of everything at that time. If she hadn't blocked this steel bar, I might have been dead by now. Mom, I shouted hoarsely, and at this time, there were actually some sporadic raindrops falling from the sky. Stimulated by the rain, Mom gradually came to her senses, ignoring the injury on her shoulder. She looked at the cloudy sky with a somewhat dazed expression. "Serena, this rain is not right." As she said this, Mom staggered to pull the battered wooden cabinet beside her. That was the only piece of furniture in our basement that hadn't been swept away by the wind. Sure enough, the rain started to get heavier and heavier. Soon it rose above our ankles. The ground was already full of broken bricks and fine sand. Mixed with the rainwater, it immediately turned into a pool of turbid mud. Soon the water accumulated more and more, and the flow became faster and faster. We could no longer stand, so we had to climb onto the wooden cabinet to take shelter. The rain poured down, and in an instant, the devastated city was once again swallowed up by the flood. Mom hugged me tightly and huddled nervously on the cabinet. The water flow became more and more turbulent, carrying us drifting downstream. We couldn't see the situation on the ground or underwater, but I could feel that all the water flows seemed to be converging towards the same place. Along the way, I vaguely saw many people struggling in the water, but there were steel bars and broken stones sticking out everywhere in the mud flow. People were knocked senseless and were soon swept into the water. Soon, we finally saw the destination that the water flow was heading towards. I felt a chill all over my body, because it turned out to be a collapsed black hole. If we were swept in, there would be no chance of survival at all. Mom also saw this desperate scene in front of us, holding me. Her tears fell like beads off a broken string. In the heavy rain, I heard her say in despair in my ear, "Serena, Mom still couldn't protect you well. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." The rain hit my face and quickly mixed with my tears. I didn't know what to say, so I could only hug Mom tightly. 100 meters, 50 meters, 30 meters, we were getting closer and closer to that black hole, and the water flow around us was getting faster and faster. At this moment, the overwhelming fear engulfed all my reason. I closed my eyes uncontrollably. However, just as Mom and I were hugging each other tightly and about to fall into that bottomless abyss, a great force suddenly came from the side. I felt my arm being tightly gripped. I opened my eyes in horror. Only then did I find that a small military green pickup boat had rushed towards us from behind at some point. The people on the boat swarmed up and helped Mom and me up in a hurry. The powerful chugging sound of the motor broke through the surging waves and reached my ears at this moment. "Are you okay? Hold on, we'll pull you up right away." Mom and I looked at those lovely people on the pickup boat and couldn't help but burst into tears. We were still alive. That feeling, it was like the bell that woke us up from a long nightmare. Every syllable was filled with the hope of new life. 27. The natural disaster that lasted for more than a month finally came to an end on this day. The sandstorm stopped, and the flood receded. The sunlight broke through the layers of haze and shone on the earth again. The disaster had destroyed our city. Countless people were forever buried under the ruins, but people were not completely swallowed up by this disaster. Many people, like Mom and me, survived. My uncle's family didn't make it through this disaster. Many former neighbors, relatives, friends, and classmates were gone forever, but we didn't give up on ourselves because of this. The army entered the city, and with their help, we survivors came together again to rebuild our homeland. The medical knowledge I had learned in university finally came in handy this time. Facing the wounded survivors, I was as busy as a spinning top. Before her injury had healed, Mom was already clamoring to go back to the basement. In the dilapidated basement, she kept rummaging around for something. I thought Mom wanted to take stock of the supplies that had been damaged by the water. And I was about to help, but Mom said it wasn't that. Ignoring the wound on her back, she searched everywhere. Finally, in the corner of the basement, she found a photo frame. Inside the photo frame was the posthumous photo of my dad, which was now lying quietly in the corner. The tornado and the flood hadn't damaged this small photo frame. Mom stroked the photo frame with her hand. Looking calm, she said, "Serena, do you remember what Mom told you? I had a really scary dream before?" It was also such an apocalyptic world. In the dream, Mom and you were robbed of all our supplies by Matthew, and we finally died a tragic death. That dream was so real. Until the end of the dream, I saw your dad. My uncle didn't notice Mom's absent-mindedness. Serena, I've always blamed your dad for leaving us so early, but if it weren't for him this time, I wouldn't have been so brave either. Perhaps, somehow, it was really your dad who saved us, mother and daughter. I hadn't seen my dad's photo for so long that I had actually forgotten what he looked like to some extent. This photo was taken by my dad when he was seriously ill. He insisted on taking it. My dad had never taken a photo in his life, and this was the only photo of him wearing formal attire. At that time, my dad was already suffering terribly from the illness, but he still had such a kind smile on his face in the photo. My dad in heaven might also be happy for us, mother and daughter, at this moment. 28. After her injury healed, Mom immediately started her old business again. Our family's grocery store was opened again in the ruins. Mom gave the grocery store a new name, Chaoyang Convenience Store. It symbolized light and hope. The Chaoyang Convenience Store only had a few simple shelves, and its scale was far smaller than before, but amidst the devastation, it was a rare trace of the hustle and bustle of life. Society was gradually restoring its original order. More and more people began to go back to the streets. The medicine of time will eventually heal all the mess. People gradually stopped feeling sad about the past, because we firmly believe that one day, the reborn city will regain its former prosperity. Story 2. The zombie apocalypse struck while my husband and I were unfortunately stranded at a scenic spot during our trip. We formed a survival team with other stranded tourists, trapped with no escape. We unexpectedly settled in and began a prosperous journey of survival with my apocalypse buddies. Darling, where shall we go have fun today? My name is Phoebe. After graduating, I had no interest in a regular job and just wanted to laze around at home, casually running an online store to make some pocket money. My husband, Reed, is a typical IT guy who just finished a big project and finally managed to find time to take me out. It's so hot out. How about we go to Qingchuan Mountain for some cool relief? I heard there's a new camping base that just opened. Sounds great. We can stay overnight in the mountains, watch the stars, and feel the evening breeze. How romantic. Although I said this, my mind was filled with thoughts of being with him under the dim moonlight. Feeling a bit excited. I immediately got out of bed and started preparing for our outing. Tents, hammocks, moisture-proof mats, blankets, pillows, mosquito nets, repellent, portable power, flashlights, thick jackets, cartridge stoves, small cooking pots, toiletries, first aid kits, and a lot of tasty food like army stew, sukiyaki, little cakes, sushi, and a big box of snacks. Oh right, my online store sells snacks and groceries. So my home is also a warehouse, stocked with lots of treats. After packing everything up, I was sweating profusely, only to turn around and see Reed, the cheeky dog, had only brought a case of his favorite soda. With everything ready, we set off on our road trip. Qingchuan Mountain, far from the urban area and with rugged mountain roads, was beautiful with its scenery of mountains and waters. Even though it was the weekend, we hardly saw anyone else. To tap into the young people's camping trend, a camping base had just opened this month, but the response was lukewarm. Since Reed and I lived in the suburbs, Qingchuan Mountain, despite being remote, was a relatively nearby attraction for us. The mountain road was full of curves, twisting and turning, but Reed seemed to enjoy this driving challenge. After 108 turns, we finally arrived at the scenic area. The scenic area looked more rundown than when we visited 2 years ago. The nearby camping base, however, stood out with its trendy decor, showing the efforts to attract tourists, yet the visitors were sparse. The area was small, with only 2 dilapidated educational bases. Further up was a huge terrace that offered a panoramic view of the entire city, which was exceptionally beautiful. There was also a large telescope on the terrace. A coin would buy you a minute's view. Reed and I scoured our pockets, found a coin, and dropped it in. It really let us see far away. Even the details of buildings at the foot of the mountain were clear. After a round, we returned to our campsite. smelling the delicious food from a neighboring young couple and a family of 3. Reed and I quickly set up our tent, took out our ingredients, and enjoyed hot pot and cola while browsing our phones, feeling like I was once again enjoying the world. Ding! Suddenly, everyone's phones chimed at once, alerting us to a trending notification on an app. The headline read, "Zombie outbreak, urban infection escalates." I immediately clicked on the hot search, and a live video started playing on the screen, showing chaotic city streets with panicked people avoiding slow-moving but highly aggressive zombies. Meanwhile, social media platforms exploded with first-hand photos and video clips of zombie attacks. Through various apps and online platforms, netizens were constantly searching and verifying news about the spread of the zombie epidemic and response measures. It was clear that others had also seen the hot search, and everyone started discussing it. Don't panic. A resolute voice commanded everyone's attention. A young man from the couple stood up and said, "I'm a soldier, just got a notification from my unit. The government has already deployed the army to handle the situation. Order will be restored soon. Please stay put and don't move around. Don't go home yet. I'll ensure everyone's safety." Reed and I looked at each other, thankful that we had brought a comprehensive set of camping supplies. Amid our panic, a slight sense of security emerged. Gradually, everyone became more familiar with each other. The couple next to us, Vivian and Owen, were also at the campsite. Vivian worked as a doctor at the hospital, and Owen was a soldier currently on leave, accompanying his girlfriend on a camping trip. A family of 3 was also nearby. The mother, Valerie, was a full-time mom. The father, Nolan, was a businessman, and their son, Peter, a primary school student who wore glasses and looked adorably nerdy. They seemed quite affluent. Arriving in a Trident brand RV, equipped with high-end camping gear that was beyond the reach of casual campers like us, Peter had scored a perfect 100 on a test, and as a reward, his parents took him camping here at Qingchuan Mountain. There were 4 other people at the site: Uncle Oscar, who ran a small shop next to the camping base; Aunt Sadie, who came to clean on weekends; Marshall, a staff member who lived in the dormitory next to the educational base; and a young man named Miles. Miles, Marshall's nephew, was known for getting into fights during his school days, which led him to drop out of high school. With nothing much to do each day and Marshall worrying about him becoming a social menace, he recommended Miles for a job as a park ranger here. Since the tourist site was remote and not very busy, the job requirements for staff were minimal, needing only courage. After the zombie outbreak, the park's higher administration called to check in and instructed them to secure the park's assets. After that, there was no further communication. That night, everyone went to bed early without any arrangement to do so. Reed and I didn't chat, we just held each other tightly. It was like a disaster you'd only expect in novels, right before our eyes, leaving us stunned and uncertain about the future. Suddenly, a loud noise shattered the night's calm, and Reed and I immediately ran to the terrace to check. We saw a massive burst of fire light up the city. "Not good," Reed said. Based on his 27 years of experience living in the city, "It's the power station." It seemed that a horde of zombies had invaded the power station, causing it to explode. The city's lights went out, plunging it into darkness as if extinguishing the last light of hope for humanity. The dark sky, the dark city, spreading smoke, and occasional flashes of fire felt like the end of the world. That night, no one slept, staying awake until dawn. The next morning, Owen gathered everyone. The situation was severe, and it looked like we wouldn't be able to return to the city for a long time. Our superiors instructed us to wait for rescue on site. In the face of disaster, we needed to unite and survive together. Everyone agreed. Then Owen suggested taking inventory of our supplies. Reed and I had brought very few because we had planned only for a simple weekend. However, when I brought out a big box of snacks, young Peter's eyes lit up. Vivian and Owen didn't have much food, but Owen, as a soldier, had brought some light weapons for self-defense, which was essential in these absurd times. The family of 3 had supplies in their RV that were even more plentiful than what I had at home. With a fridge full and even 11 of Peter's exercise books, Uncle Oscar led us into his small shop, a food cart of just a few square meters. Inside, we found 10 boxes of mineral water, 5 cases of iced tea, 60 loaves of bread, 30 instant noodle cups, 50 raw corn cobs, and about 40 sausages. Uncle Oscar sheepishly mentioned that the site usually had few visitors and was inconveniently located, so his stock wasn't as extensive as a supermarket's. But everyone was thrilled by what was available. Aunt Sadie, responsible for cleanliness, only came to clean on weekends and had brought just her lunch for the day, leaving only a stainless steel lunchbox. Marshall and Miles, who lived on-site year-round, had basic food supplies and cooking utensils. Importantly, they had 2 dorm rooms and offered one to Aunt Sadie. Surprisingly, Marshall also had a small vegetable garden with cabbage, cucumbers, tomatoes, eggplants, green onions, and bean pods. and even a couple of free-range chickens, ensuring a supply of eggs. Here's a summary of our supplies: food, self-heating rice meals, instant noodles, flour, rice, meats, cooking oil, snacks, sausages, corn, cabbage, cucumbers, tomatoes, eggplants, green onions, bean pods, drinks, mineral water, iced tea, alcohol initially intended for an evening boost with my husband, Reed, basic equipment, cassette stove, fire pit, induction cooker, charcoal. Light weapons including Owen's nunchaku and spring knife, tents, living essentials, toothpaste, toothbrushes, power banks, towels, first aid kits. Additionally, there's Vivian and Owen's electric car, our Jeep, and the family of three's RV. Everyone decided to split into 2 educational bases. Reed and I took one, while Vivian and Owen took the other. Although there were no beds, we all had camping pads and sleeping bags. So sleeping wasn't an issue. 2 dormitories were assigned for cleaning. Aunt Sadie took one, and Marshall and Miles took the other. Uncle Oscar, to protect everyone's supplies, decided to stay in his merchandise truck. Rebecca's family of 3 continued to live in their large RV, which had full living amenities, including a shower. After taking stock, everyone felt a bit more at ease. Surprisingly, in this apocalypse, we had become resource-rich individuals. Moreover, Qingchuan Mountain was far from the urban area and sparsely populated, making it a very safe base for the apocalypse. Despite the safety, Owen still led the men to lock the iron gate at the entrance of the scenic area, securing it with lots of wire. They built a stone wall inside the gate and raised the surrounding walls. This effectively blocked any invading zombies. With 2 sides bordered by mountains and one by a cliff, it remained very secure. After completing the base defenses, Owen led the men to construct a device to filter mountain spring water. Although the area had tap water, it was unreliable in the apocalypse. Fortunately, there was a mountain spring source in the scenic area. The men first dug a small sedimentation pond in the camp, where they poured the spring water to settle the mud and impurities. Then, using clean cloth towels as the first layer of filtration, they slowly poured the settled water through, removing most visible suspended particles. Next, they used plastic bottles filled with natural filtering materials like fine sand, activated carbon, crushed stone, and pebbles to remove fine particles, organic matter, and some microbes through physical adsorption and filtration. For safe drinking, they boiled the filtered spring water for a while to effectively kill any remaining pathogens. This completed the water filtration system. Thus, everyone settled down resignedly. Mobile phone signals were virtually non-existent. People passed the time playing board games, fighting landlords, catching chickens, and playfully teasing Dear Peter. Life was relatively peaceful, but soon, the first crisis occurred. 02. The restrooms in the scenic area were built on the edge of a cliff, where waste was directly freely flown away. Although a bit risky and chilly during windy times, the lack of odor and no need for cleaning left everyone quite satisfied, until one day, our tissues ran out first. My husband Reed went to borrow toilet paper from Owen, who solemnly pulled out the last crumpled piece from his pocket, thought for a moment, and tore it in half to hand to him. Bro, we only have 1 piece left. Here's half for you. The other half is for my sister-in-law's last bit of dignity. Stunned, Reed waved it off and decided to ask Rebecca instead. As their family likely had more supplies, Reed went to Rebecca's RV, where she awkwardly presented half a pack of kitchen towels. Peter's been having a runny nose these days, and we've used up all the tissues. We're down to just this half pack of kitchen towels, she explained, shaking his head. Reed replied, keep it for the kid. He then turned to ask Marshall. Marshall and Miles, always up in the mountains, had been using the most primitive methods with branches. Thinking of his delicate condition from sitting long hours in the office, Reed decided to try his luck with Uncle Oscar. Unfortunately, Uncle Oscar's shop was also out of supplies. Unexpectedly, our first crisis was the Great Tissue Crisis. At that moment, Peter timidly stepped forward. Brother, sister, I have a way that might help us last a while. Everyone looked at him expectantly, but he glanced at Rebecca and pouted. I'm afraid to say it. Mom might scold me. Rebecca encouraged. Peter, at times like these, just speak up. Solving the problem is all that matters, Peter excitedly revealed. Mom brought me 11 workbooks. Each book has 80 pages, making a total of 880 pages, enough to keep us going for a long time. The room fell silent, as if in a comic strip. A crow might have flown by, and Rebecca's face turned dark. In the silence, Reed said softly, maybe start with a cover for me. It won't affect the child's studies. Peter happily turned around to get it, with Rebecca chasing after him shouting, get one that's already been written on. Start with the minor subjects, then use the major subjects. It seems like pushing kids to excel is ubiquitous. Recently, everyone occasionally used the telescope on the patio to check out the city area. This was all thanks to Peter bringing a box of coins, which we later found out was because he heard a classmate he had a crush on mention that her dad took her to Qingchuan Mountain for fun, and she discovered that the telescope here could see her house. He fantasized about seeing his crush doing her homework at home, which is why he insisted that Rebecca and manager Yu bring him to Qingchuan Mountain. Looking through the telescope, the streets during the day appeared lifeless, and the city at night had been without lights for many days. One night, a rustling sound came from outside. I shook Reed, who was deep in sleep, and he just turned over and continued snoring, desperate for the bathroom. I battled internally but decided to go. I quickly went to the bathroom, and on my way back, I felt as if eyes were watching me. I scanned around with my flashlight but saw nothing unusual. Just as I was about to return to my room, a strange noise came from the woods next to the house, growing rapidly closer, engulfing me with an ominous premonition. Suddenly, a dark figure lunged at me. My heart tightened, and I screamed instinctively. A reflexive sidestep helped me dodge it. Although the moonlight was faint, it shone on the figure, a pair of sharp, wild eyes fixed on me, exuding an extraordinary ferocity and cunning. Its blood-red nose and blue-purple, wrinkled cheeks stood out starkly under the dim moonlight. It was a mountain macaque. Its sharp fangs eerily protruded from its lower jaw, and its silvery gray fur could not hide the numerous deep bite marks on its body. Clearly, this ecological disaster had turned it into a different kind of monster. No longer the primate we once knew. Fortunately, in my frantic dodging, my flashlight had caught its eyes, and the intense light made it step back a few paces. "Quick, get behind me." Owen, hearing my scream, arrived immediately, pulling out his spring-loaded baton. Perhaps the light had infuriated the macaque, causing it to emit a terrifying howl that froze me to the spot, my legs heavy as if filled with lead. In contrast, Owen remained composed, using his combat skills learned from regular training, while observing the mutated macaque's movements. Leveraging his agility, Owen continuously dodged the macaque's attacks, waiting for opportunities to strike back, but the macaque was also incredibly agile. Quickly leaping to try and grasp his arm, Owen reacted swiftly, using self-defense techniques to sidestep the monkey's grab and block with his baton. The macaque's strength was surprisingly formidable, gripping the baton tightly, leading to a perilous standoff. Suddenly, a flurry of firecrackers went off. Pop, 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 pop. The mutated macaque, terrified of the intense flashes and sounds, covered its eyes with its arms. Seizing the opportunity, Owen pulled out a knife from his pocket and plunged it into its head. The macaque fell to the ground. It turned out that Marshall had brought out some leftover New Year firecrackers, guessing that the macaque might be scared of them. It was a fortuitous mishap that came in handy. Vivian quickly checked Owen for injuries. Fortunately, thanks to his training, he only suffered a minor scratch and wasn't bitten. Everyone examined the body of the mutated macaque. They found a small tag that read B City Zoo. It seemed that after the zoo was overrun by zombies, the macaque had taken the chance to escape, only to be infected by the zombie virus. Driven by its natural instincts, it had come to the mountains, wandering in the woods, where it happened to encounter us. In the face of disaster, animals are as pitiable as humans. In a post-apocalyptic world marred by devastation, the animals no longer frolicked or made merry sounds. After the zombie virus wreaked havoc, their eyes shimmered with a sick madness, their once nimble and lively forms replaced by agony and confusion, a truly pitiful sight. Following the incident with the mutated mountain demons, everyone became more vigilant, starting to take turns guarding at night. Each night, 2 people would take shifts, one for the first half and the other for the latter. Then, one night, something astonishing happened. I woke up to find myself sitting at my office desk, faced with endless files and the manager's constant nagging. The guy at the desk across from mine pretended to be busy as usual. It turns out the apocalypse was just a dream. I jumped up excitedly and kissed my manager's bald head, realizing that compared to the apocalypse, going to work was trivial. As long as everyone was alive and society was functioning normally and stably, happiness was right beside us. Wait, something's not right. Why does my manager's round face now bear the handsome features of a movie star? I looked out the window to see colorful hot air balloons floating outside. Damn it, this is City B, not romantic Turkey. What are these hot air balloons doing here? Could it be that I am? Suddenly, I lost consciousness. When I came to, pain shot through my hands and feet, and it took a long time for my eyes to focus. I was tied up in the dorm room of Marshall and Miles. To be precise, it wasn't just me. Reed, Vivian, Owen, Rebecca, Maxwell, Peter, Uncle Oscar, and Marshall were all tied up here too. We looked at each other, clueless about what had happened. Our mouths were also sealed with tape. With a creak, the old wooden door was pushed open. Miles walked in, a smug look on his face. Marshall, being the elder, was the most agitated. making muffled noises and glaring angrily at Miles. Miles, unfazed, looked at us disdainfully and spoke. "Did you enjoy the mushrooms yesterday? Those were specially selected hallucinogenic mushrooms I picked for you." "So that was it. Yesterday, Miles mentioned that after eating instant noodles for so many days, he wanted everyone to try something fresh and picked some mushrooms from the forest," Maxwell said. "These aren't poisonous mushrooms, right?" Miles laughed, saying he was from Yunnan and was very familiar with mushrooms. He even confidently assured us that there would be no problems. Indeed, the mushroom soup turned out to be delicious, and everyone had a bowl. It turns out Miles had poisoned everyone with the mushroom soup. "Do you know why I've rounded you all up?" Everyone looked at him in unison. I believe I wasn't the only one baffled by his actions. He walked up to me and read, Why are you two so in love? I don't even have a girlfriend. And here you are, calling each other honey all day. Have you ever considered my feelings?" Reed and I were dumbfounded, staring at the raging monster before us. He turned to Owen. "Everyone admires your bravery, and they all listen to you. Why should I do what you say? Why do you get to lead and steal all the limelight?" Owen's eyes shot a sharp look that frightened Miles, who stepped back a few steps, laughed nervously at his own cowardice, and then staggered forward to kick Owen. Touching Vivian's fair cheeks, he said possessively, "Vivian, my dear Vivian, how wonderful it would be if you were my girlfriend. I'd pamper you every day. Look at this big butt, perfect for bearing my son." Vivian cried out in fear, and Owen headbutted towards Miles, who dodged, causing Owen to miss. Miles then turned his lecherous gaze to Uncle Oscar. "My dear Uncle Oscar, remember when I borrowed cigarettes from you? You always gave me the cheap $5 ones and smoked the good ones yourself. Thinking I wouldn't know. Ha ha ha. Who are you looking down on?" Uncle Oscar, infuriated, turned his face away, ignoring him. He then approached Rebecca's family, saying, "I've hated rich people all my life. Why do you get to be so wealthy, living in luxury cars, wearing gold watches? I am no worse than you. You guys live in luxurious RVs with air conditioning and showers, while I'm stuck in this shabby dormitory. I'll tie you up and enjoy it myself." He even snatched Maxwell's gold necklace. At last, he approached his marshal, speaking fiercely, "I hate you the most. Even without a zombie apocalypse, I'd have killed you one day. At home, I'm free to do as I please, gamble if I want, go wherever I want, and have several women at my disposal. It's all because of you, an old fool, telling my parents that I'm a menace to society with no future, making me come to this godforsaken mountain to work as a security guard with you. There's nothing here, and because of you, I didn't get the news of my mother's death in time, and couldn't travel back quickly enough to see her one last time. I hate you to the bone. Thank goodness for the zombies. Now I can kill you, and in these end times, who's going to stop me? Ha ha ha." Marshall was whimpering something, but Miles completely ignored him and asked where Maxwell's large gold watch was before swaggering out to look for it. Everyone was plunged into despair. In this apocalypse, the most terrifying thing isn't the zombies, but the people. Human nature really can't withstand even a little test in these end times. We thought we were lucky to survive safely in the suburbs, far from the city center, only to find that the devil was right next to us. Just then, someone pushed the door open, making everyone tense up again, but then they saw who it was and burst into exclamations of excitement. It was Sister Sadie, the cleaning lady, coming in with a broom. "Why are you all here? I woke up this morning and saw everyone was gone. I was so puzzled." Sister Sadie kept talking quietly, and I was almost jumping up in anxiety until she realized what was happening and quickly found tools to help us untie. Thankfully, Maxwell's RV was filled with treasures, which kept the thug Miles occupied for so long without finishing his plunder. Sister Sadie appeared before us like a deity, no exaggeration. I could even see a glow surrounding her. It was also lucky that Sister Sadie is usually introverted and didn't interact much with Miles, going unnoticed in the team. Yesterday, when we had mushroom soup because it was so delicious, everyone had a bowl. But by the time the shy Sister Sadie went to serve herself, there was none left, and she was too timid to speak up. When Miles was tying people up, Sister Sadie conveniently went to the bathroom. By a stroke of luck, Miles missed her, so never underestimate the minor characters. They can save us all. After being untied, everyone was ready to confront Miles for revenge. Owen especially, red-faced with anger, his girlfriend having been humiliated, naturally took the lead. When we reached the RV, Miles was lying on the bed, playing with Maxwell's large gold watch, his eyes full of greed. Seeing us, he was startled and tried to run, but was quickly surrounded and restrained by several men. Rebecca saw the room turned upside down by Miles, dirty footprints on the white sheets, and pillows thrown on the floor. Being a clean freak, she screamed and rushed over to scratch Miles's face. She was stopped by Marshall. Suddenly, Marshall knelt down, clasped his hands together, and pleaded with everyone, "Please spare my nephew." It's my fault for not watching him properly. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just give him a meal. I'll make sure to keep an eye on him from now on. Miles still shouted, "Old man, stop pretending to be good. I don't need your pity." Marshall approached Miles and said, "I have no children of my own and have always treated you as my son. That's why I've been so strict with you. You've been wandering through society, dabbling in petty theft for years. I couldn't bear the thought of you making a grave mistake, so I brought you here. It pains me that you failed to see my good intentions, and your mother's situation only adds to my guilt. You say you hate me, and if killing me would relieve that hatred, then take my life." Overcome with emotion, Miles began to cry, his tears a testament to his newfound realization. We confined him to his dormitory, ensuring he had food and water every day, even in a post-apocalyptic world where society lacks order and restraint. We couldn't bring ourselves to act immorally. One sunny afternoon, as we were cheerfully cooking, a loud banging on the huge iron gate sent chills down everyone's spine, the violent knocks echoing like thunderclaps. Peter, terrified, immediately dove into the RV. The sound came from the park's main gate, a symbol of our safety, now terrifying like a death countdown. My heart raced, sweat trickling down my forehead, enveloped by a powerful fear. The men grabbed their weapons, shielding the women and children behind them. Owen suggested we all go and check it out. We gathered together, cautiously approaching the iron gate in a tight circle. The relentless knocking continued, each thud straining our tense nerves. Peering through the cracks in the stone wall, we spotted two figures outside, unsure if they were infected. We hesitated to make a move. Then, a man's voice from outside called, "Marshall! Marshall!" Marshall found a larger crack to peer through and recognized the people outside. "It's Lincoln." Marshall turned and informed us. Lincoln lived about 2 or 3 kilometers outside the park. Having retired from city life in pursuit of a pastoral dream, he had moved to Qingchuan Mountain and built a wooden house where he and his spouse enjoyed a tranquil retirement, bonding over their shared love of gardening. Lincoln often visited the park to seek advice on vegetable cultivation from Marshall. Marshall called out, "Lincoln, what's the matter?" "Marshall, my daughter-in-law is about to give birth. Can you help us? You're the only ones within 10 kilometers. Marshall looked around, seeking a consensus from the hesitant faces around him. Rebecca spoke up. "We can't be sure if the newcomers are virus-free, nor can we predict if we'll encounter zombies. Are we really willing to take this risk?" Maxwell responded, "But if we ignore someone in need, how are we any different from the zombies? We can't let our humanity be eroded away by these circumstances." Reed also stepped forward. "I understand both concerns. Indeed, a rescue could expose us to unknown dangers. However, if we have the capacity to help and choose not to, I fear it could cost us our very humanity." Owen nodded in agreement. "Right, I think we should make every effort to help him. After all, in this world overrun by zombies, unity and mutual assistance are our only means of survival, ultimately." We decided to extend our help. Without further delay, several men took hammers to the stone wall, creating a passage. Owen said, "Vivian is a doctor, she and I can go. The rest should stay here and wait." I remembered our vehicle, a Jeep we had bought last year. At the time, I had complained that Reed's choice was too rugged and didn't suit my more delicate tastes. It seemed excessive for city use and guzzled gas like water. Now, it appeared to be the perfect vehicle for the apocalypse. "Let's take our car and go together." Reed went to start the car, and the others opened the iron gate. There we saw Lincoln and his spouse, dusty from travel but thankfully unharmed. "Everyone, take it easy." As we approached the Lincoln residence, we could hear a woman's cries from afar, her pain from childbirth unrelenting. Vivian started giving orders to everyone. Lincoln and Aunt Karen, "Quickly boil several large pots of hot water for cleaning and sterilizing the tools." Phoebe, "Sterilize the scissors over fire to prevent infection." Reed, "Get the first aid kit from the car. I remember it has alcohol, iodine, saline solution, bandages, and the like." Owen, "You're strong. Help me hold down the woman in labor." After quickly arranging everything, Vivian bent down to comfort the laboring woman. "Don't worry. Your body is ready to welcome this new life. The pain is temporary. Both you and your baby will be safe. Now, please follow my guidance to breathe and push." The woman cooperated well with Vivian, but the baby was still not born. Vivian comforted her again. "Everything is under control. All equipment and medication are ready. Come on, deep breaths with me. Let's cheer for the arrival of the new life." The woman continued to follow Vivian's breathing and pushing rhythm. However, the woman's cries began to change. From the initial screams of pain to a kind of suppressed growling, Vivian noted, her pulses getting weaker, her heartbeat irregular. These could be symptoms of complications during childbirth. After a while, Vivian suddenly looked panicked, her voice trembling, her temperature is rising rapidly, her skin is starting to show signs of lividity. This can't be a normal physiological response. Suddenly, during a contraction, the woman struggled violently. her strength far exceeding that of an ordinary person. After a sharp scream, her eyes turned blank, black saliva dripping from her mouth, her previously weak body now filled with savage strength. I pointed at the woman in panic. What is that sound coming from her throat? That's not a sound a human can make. Her teeth are becoming sharp. Owen still firmly held the woman down, and then everyone realized. She must have turned into a zombie. I was so scared I kept backing away until I hit a cabinet behind me. The door of the cabinet swung open, revealing a terrifying face. It was a young male zombie, his skin in an extremely unhealthy state, pale as ash. Due to the infection, his nervous system was damaged, causing his facial expressions to be stiff or spasmodic. His eye sockets were deeply sunken, utterly horrifying, but his hands and feet were tied, and he could only struggle in a twisted manner. Just then, the Lincolns, who were previously frantic, also had bloodshot eyes and had turned. Suddenly, the four of us were surrounded by zombies. It turned out that Lincoln's daughter-in-law was about to give birth and it was inconvenient to travel far to visit the elderly. Thinking of visiting the elderly before giving birth, unfortunately, they encountered a zombie outbreak on the way. Lincoln's son, upon alighting from the car to check, was unfortunately infected but still managed to bring his wife to his parents' house with strong willpower. However, the zombie virus was too strong, and in the end, he lost his human sanity and bit his parents and wife. I wondered why Lincoln and his wife came asking for help dressed in long sleeves and pants despite it being summer, out of deep love for their son. They couldn't bear to kill him and instead tied him up and stuffed him into the wardrobe. The daughter-in-law, due to excessive shock, had an accidental premature birth. Even though Lincoln and his wife knew they were infected and could potentially harm us, faced with their daughter-in-law's painful situation, they still took a chance and brought us here. Human nature, in the face of apocalypse, indeed crumbles easily. Be careful, Reed kicked Aunt Kieran, who was rushing towards me. Owen quickly grabbed a kitchen knife, standing in front of us to fend off the zombie assault. His actions were firm and precise, each swing accurately aimed at the zombies' heads. Reed, using his agile skills, climbed onto the highest table and used the height advantage to strike down on the zombies. Vivian stepped back a few meters from the door, scattered alcohol on the ground, pulled out a lighter, and shouted to Owen and Reed, "Get out now." Once everyone had evacuated outside, Vivian ignited the lighter and threw it at the alcohol-soaked floor, creating a burst of flames that effectively slowed down the zombie assault by the Lincoln family, trapping them inside the house. At that moment, I was already waiting in the car at the doorway. For a while, flames erupted, and monstrous roars echoed from inside the house, soon going silent. Finally, we escaped from that troubled place. Back in the safe zone, we isolated ourselves with others. Everyone showered and checked their bodies. Fortunately, thanks to our quick reactions and well-coordinated efforts, none of us were bitten. Nevertheless, we decided to self-isolate for a week. A week later, all four of us were healthy and showed no signs of infection. As days passed, the city grew quieter, and we weren't even sure if there were any other survivors out there. We went from occasionally using the telescope to only using it once every 3 days, partly because the city remained the same every day, and partly because Peter's supply of coins was dwindling. As time passed, our supplies were also running low. Marshall's vegetable garden was thriving, providing us with food, but our main staples were diminishing, leading us to reduce our meals from 3 to 2 a day, and now to just 1. Thankfully, Uncle Oscar had the foresight to plant corn at the outbreak's onset. Despite the harsh conditions of the apocalypse, we succeeded in growing corn, planted in the summer. By autumn, after 100 days, the corn husks yellowed and began to dry, and the kernels were plump and hard. When it was time to harvest, everyone was overjoyed. It was unexpected to experience the joy of a bountiful harvest amidst the apocalypse. One day, a rumbling noise came from outside, and the sharp soldier, Owen, immediately stood up. "It's a helicopter. Someone's come to rescue us. Let's go outside." We all ran to the terrace, and indeed, there was a helicopter circling in the clear sky, a symbol of redemption. The helicopter belonged to a secret search and rescue team that didn't broadcast their flight path publicly, relying instead on satellite imagery and potential signs of life for scouting. Seeing the circling helicopter, a flame of rebirth ignited in our hearts. We shouted with all our might, waving sheets and jackets, even lighting a fire to draw its attention. However, due to the helicopter's high altitude, the noise being masked by the surroundings, and visibility issues, the pilot did not notice us. The helicopter gradually moved away and disappeared into the horizon. Once again, we plunged into despair, the missed opportunity nearly breaking our spirits. This experience highlighted the helplessness of individual lives amidst the apocalypse. We all sat down dejectedly. Suddenly Peter said, "Doesn't the presence of a helicopter mean there are other survivors?" I saw a spark light up in everyone's eyes. Fresh ideas are always helpful. Yes, We aren't the only ones, it seems there are other survivors, and the country hasn't given up on searching. Life goes on, sometimes we revel in the luck of surviving, forgetting all the unpleasantness, singing, dancing, cooking, and farming together, creating a haven-like atmosphere in our small sanctuary, where everyone became like family. At times, we fall into uncertainty about the future, not knowing when we could return to our previous lives. Every day, most of our time was spent on the terrace, unspoken, but everyone secretly hoped for the helicopter to reappear. 5 months passed, the weather grew colder, and just as we were worrying about the approaching winter, Owen rushed out joyfully with his phone in hand. We're saved, we can finally descend the mountain. The organization called me to lead everyone down. The city has been cleared and everyone can return home now. Everyone was overjoyed, laughing and crying. As if it were a festive celebration, upon returning to the city, the apocalyptic trials had transformed it into a desolate and stunning scene, reminiscent of a doomsday painting. The once bustling metropolis was now eerily silent and barren. Abandoned skyscrapers stood against the setting sun, their shattered glass facades reflecting a cold and lifeless glow. The streets were sparsely populated, with only the wind stirring up the dust and debris from the ruins and tattered flyers fluttering in the air. Highways once bustling with traffic were now blocked by abandoned vehicles, their rusty wrecks as if frozen in time. The exteriors of buildings bore the marks of age and destruction, with graffiti and faded warning signs intertwined, narrating the chaos and despair of the eve of the apocalypse. In residential areas, rows of apartment buildings had shattered windows and doors, interiors in disarray, and personal belongings scattered about, silently revealing the scenes of residents' hasty evacuations. Park benches stood lonely amid withered vegetation, and children's play equipment was in ruins, mocking the bygone era of stability. Fortunately, everything was in the past now, and the government had actively started rebuilding our homes. I also donated all the snacks from my home's storage, dove back into IT work, contributing to the rebuilding of information systems. Vivian and Owen were always on the front lines. Vivian joined the medical team, healing and saving lives, while Owen returned to the military, actively participating in construction and ensuring the safety of the people. Through Owen, I saw a soldier's noble conviction, sense of responsibility, and strong personal qualities. Maxwell suffered the most severe losses, but he didn't hesitate to donate all his company's assets to help rebuild our home, casually saying, "It's just a drop in the bucket, I can earn it all back quickly with my abilities." Peter went back to school, surprisingly finding his crush also attending. He cried and said, "I can see you without needing a coin," which is wonderful. Soon, we attended Vivian and Owen's wedding, which was simple yet significant. Vivian wore a red dress, and Owen was in his military uniform. They clung tightly to each other, their faces beaming with happiness. Owen said that the apocalyptic experience taught him not to wait anymore but to keep his loved ones close. Watching their blissful expressions, Reed and I also held hands tightly. Although it wasn't dramatic, this experience made us realize the importance of each other and deepened our love. Finally, Peter, the ring bearer, asked the question we had all been wondering but hadn't asked. "Brother Owen, why is it that we have no network on our phones, yet you could receive calls?" Owen shook his phone in his hand and said, "Because I'm using a state-of-the-art phone that can make and receive satellite calls."